My husband left our daughter with a broken arm so he could go sleep with my sister. Then I found them on our family couch right in the middle of it. But honestly, getting a divorce feels much better to me. I'm a 40-year-old woman. My husband, Ben, I'm not even sure I should call him a man, is 42. We were married for 18 years, starting when I was 22 and he was 24. We have two beautiful kids, a 14-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter. My older sister, who's 43, has always had issues with me. Growing up, I never understood why she seemed to hate me so much. I didn't get why she hated me, especially since our parents always favored her. I was the one who should have hated her. She always seemed to take everything I cared about, too. When I was 15, I found out I had a real talent for basketball. My coach said I was one of the most talented players he'd seen in years. For the first time, I found something that felt truly mine, something I was good at that made me feel good about myself. 3 weeks after I joined the team, my sister suddenly decided she was interested in basketball. She wasn't bad either, but she wasn't on my level. Then one day during practice, she seriously injured her knee. She told our parents that I had pushed her during a drill because I was jealous of how good she was. I never did that. Never. But my parents believed her, without question. I was banned from playing basketball forever. They said I was too competitive and dangerous. I lost the only thing that had ever given me confidence. That was just one example, out of many. She stole my first boyfriend in high school by telling him lies about me. She spread rumors about me at school that made it hard for me to make friends. Despite all that, I kept my distance and tried to build my own life, away from her shadow. When I met Ben, I thought I had finally gotten away from her influence. Ben worked hard at his dad's construction company, and I worked part-time as an administrative assistant at a local clinic. We made enough money to take the next step and get married. And until recently, it had seemed like a good decision. But 18 years later, I realized it wasn't. Anytime my sister called Ben for help, whether it was moving furniture, fixing something at her house, or just wanting to talk, he'd drop everything and go running to her. At first, I thought he was just being nice, but there was this urgency in how fast he'd respond that made me uncomfortable. He never moved that fast for anyone else, not even his own mother. 6 months ago, my sister Diane and her husband Mark got divorced. Mark had always seemed like a nice guy, polite and friendly. Their divorce seemed to come out of nowhere. Diane told everyone that Mark had been emotionally abusive, but something about her story didn't feel right. But the first person she called after the divorce was final was Ben. Not me, her sister, but my husband. And that's when Ben immediately started dropping everything to go comfort her. The breaking point came last month. My daughter Emily broke her arm when she fell off her bike. Ben and I took her to the hospital together while our son stayed at a friend's place. After we got home, Emily wanted her favorite comfort food, a milkshake and fries from the local diner. Since she'd always been a daddy's girl, she asked if Ben would stay with her while I went out to get the food. I agreed and went to the diner. When I got back about 20 minutes later, I found Emily crying on the couch. Ben was putting on his jacket by the door. I asked him what was going on, and he said Diane had called. She wasn't feeling well and needed him to come over to see her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Our daughter had just broken her arm. She was in pain, and he was just leaving. I asked him to stay, explaining that Emily needed him right then. He looked at me like I was being unreasonable and said, "Your sister needs me." Then he just walked out the door. I just stood there, the food getting cold in my hands, watching my daughter cry harder. I left the food, went upstairs, and packed bags for myself and the kids. I called my friend Audrey, who had always supported me, and asked if the kids and I could stay with her for a few days. She said yes without a second thought. I woke Emily up, told her we were going to Audrey's place, and called my son to tell him to meet us there. 2 days later, I realized I had left my work computer at home. I needed it for an important project I had to turn in the next day, so I had no choice but to go back home. I figured Ben would be at work, so I used my key and let myself in. Turning the corner, I saw something I'll never forget. There they were, Ben and Diane, right there on our family couch, the same one where we watched movies with the kids. They were having sex. They were so caught up in what they were doing, they didn't even notice me at first. When they finally saw me standing there, they scrambled to cover themselves. Ben's face went completely pale. I asked them how long this had been going on. He started making excuses, saying it had only happened a few times, and that he still loved me. I didn't wait around to hear anymore. I just told him I wanted a divorce and walked out. I drove back to Audrey's place, completely in shock. When I got there, I collapsed on her couch. I told her everything I had seen. Audrey was furious. Even though I asked her not to, she called my parents and told them what happened. In a way, I was relieved she did it, because I didn't want to have to explain everything myself. My phone started blowing up with calls and messages from Ben and Diane. I just turned it off. I didn't want to deal with them right then. Ben hadn't even asked me why I left, or bothered to check on me at all in the past few days, so it didn't really matter if I disappeared now. I was sure he saw this as a chance to spend a couple more days with my sister. I had to figure out how I was going to tell my kids that their dad and aunt had destroyed our family. Now I'm just trying to find the strength to say all this out loud to my kids, which is why I'm here, asking for advice. In the first few hours, I was in shock and hadn't fully grasped what was happening. But now I feel pretty awful and I'm starting to feel the weight of it all. Update 1. I want to thank everyone here because you've been so good for the most part at lifting my spirits. I wouldn't say I feel 100% okay right now, but reading your comments and jokes about my husband and sister really has made me feel better. Time helps too. A couple of weeks can do a lot. After staying with Audrey for 5 days, I finally had to face telling the kids the truth. I sat them down in Audrey's living room and explained that their father had cheated on me with their aunt, Diane. My son immediately stood up, kicked a chair, and ran out of the room. My daughter just looked at me, shook her head, and said I was lying. I expected that reaction. She and Ben have always been really close. She ran to her temporary room and slammed the door. I gave them both some space. My son came back about an hour later, sat next to me on the couch, and rested his head on my shoulder. We didn't talk. My daughter stayed in her room until dinner. She barely ate and didn't look at me. That same day, I called a lawyer and started the divorce process. I also took out half the money from our joint bank account and put it into a new account in my name. The house is in both our names, but I paid the down payment using an inheritance from my grandmother. So my lawyer says I have a strong case to keep it. 2 days later, Audrey called me at work and told me to come over to her place right away. When I got there, I found my parents, Ben's parents, and Ben all sitting in her living room. Audrey had set up this meeting without telling me. She said it was time for everyone to hear the full truth directly. I walked in and stood near the door, ready to leave if I needed to. My parents looked confused and angry. Ben's parents were sitting stiffly on the edge of the couch. Audrey told everyone exactly what she had seen that day back at the house. Then Audrey dropped another bombshell. She had spoken to Mark, Diane's ex-husband. He told her he had left Diane because she had been emotionally and physically abusive during their marriage. He said the breaking point came when she hit him during an argument and threatened to tell everyone he was the abuser if he ever told anyone the truth. So Diane had lied about why they got divorced. Suddenly, my mother stood up and slapped me across the face. She yelled that this was all nonsense and that I had somehow convinced my friend to talk bad about Ben and Diane. Ben's dad pulled her away from me, while his mom just looked at me in horror. Ben stood there with his head in his hands, saying nothing. Audrey told my parents to get out of her house. They left, but not before my father pointed at me and said, "This is all your fault for not being a better wife." Ben's parents stayed. His mother came over to me, hugged me, and whispered that she was so sorry. His father told Ben that he was fired from the family business. Then my daughter came downstairs. She must have heard everything, because she walked right up to Ben and told him she hated him. She said he wasn't her father anymore. Then she turned to me and apologized for not believing me. My son appeared behind her, looked at Ben, and just said, "You chose her over us." Then, both kids went back upstairs. Ben completely broke down then, sobbing and begging me to forgive him. He swore he would end things with Diane, saying it had just been a mistake, that he still loved me and the kids more than anything. I told him he had 2 days to get his stuff out of our house or I would call the police. He said he had nowhere else to go. His parents told him he wasn't welcome at their place after what he'd done, but we all told him that was his problem, not ours. 3 days later, the kids and I moved back into our house. Ben had taken his clothes and personal stuff, but he'd also taken a little bit more. I found my wedding ring on the kitchen table. Diane's ex-husband, Mark, reached out to me after hearing everything from Audrey. He suggested we meet for coffee. I said yes. I needed to understand more about everything that had happened. Mark was just as kind as I remembered, but now there was this cloud of sadness around him. He told me that Diane had been abusive throughout their marriage, starting with small criticisms that escalated to her completely controlling his life. When he finally confronted her about it, she became physically violent. He showed me a scar on his arm from where she had thrown a glass at him. He had photos of bruises and copies of threatening texts she had sent him. He asked if I wanted to file a police report with him. The idea of Diane finally facing consequences for her actions after so many years of getting away with it and hurting people really appealed to me. We went to the police station together the next day. The officer who took our report seemed skeptical at first, especially when Mark showed him his evidence. Male victims of domestic abuse aren't always taken seriously, but after seeing the messages and photos, the officer agreed to open a case. He advised us to get restraining orders and recommended lawyers who specialized in domestic abuse cases. The kids were having a really hard time. My daughter would have these moments where she would just stare into space and wouldn't respond when I called her name. My son barely spoke. They both refused to go to school. I arranged for them to start seeing a counselor, but the earliest appointment we could get was in 2 weeks. Ben kept calling and texting. He sent flowers, cards, and gifts for the kids. I didn't throw them away, but honestly, I didn't really care. I'll probably end up donating them if the kids don't want them. Then one night, someone knocked on the door. I found Mark there with pizza and a board game. He said he thought the kids might need a distraction. They had always thought of him as Uncle Mark when he was married to Dion. My son actually smiled when he saw him, which was the first time in 2 weeks. My daughter gave him a hug. We ate pizza and played Monopoly until pretty late. For a few hours, the kids seemed almost normal. When they went to bed, Mark helped me clean up. He told me he was still in therapy, dealing with everything that happened after his marriage to Diane. He suggested that the kids might benefit from it too. I agreed. Before leaving, he hugged me, promised he'd keep an eye on us, and left. The next day, I heard that Diane had been fired from her job after her boss found out about the police report. She was telling everyone that I had made up lies about her to get sympathy. Some people contacted me privately to tell me they had always known something wasn't right with her. The kids are my priority. Now, the divorce papers are filed. I've blocked Ben on my phone, though he keeps finding new numbers to call from. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know we're not going back to how things were before. There are some things that just can't be fixed. Update 2. In the past couple of months, life has settled into a new routine. The kids and I have been seeing a family therapist once a week, and they each have individual sessions too. It's helping, slowly but surely. Work has been really busy, which is kind of a blessing. It gives me something to think about other than the divorce stuff and the kids' struggles. I've also started going for walks in the afternoons, just to clear my head. Last week, I joined a fitness class at the community center. It feels good to finally take care of myself after months of barely functioning. At the gym, I met a woman named Tara who's also going through a divorce. We've started meeting up for coffee before our classes. It's helpful because she understands what it's like to go through a divorce, but she's not involved in the details of my situation. My daughter is still having a tough time. Some days she's furious with Ben, telling me she never wants to see him again. Other days, she misses him terribly and will go stay over at his new apartment. I never stop her from seeing him. She needs to process her feelings in her own way. The therapist explained that my daughter sometimes dissociates when her emotions get too overwhelming for her. My son refuses to see or talk to Ben at all. He deleted his dad's number from his phone and blocks any new numbers Ben tries to contact him from. I don't tell him what to do either. He's old enough to decide if he wants a relationship with his dad or not. The therapist says I shouldn't pressure him. He'll come around when he's ready, if he ever is. Just last week, I found my son crying in his room late at night. I sat on his bed and put my arm around him. He told me he missed the way things used to be, but he hated his dad for destroying our family. I stayed with him until he fell asleep, something I hadn't done since he was little. Mark has been a really unexpected source of support. He comes over at least once a week, usually bringing dinner or a movie for the kids. They've gotten closer to him, especially my son, who seems to see him as a kind of father figure. My daughter is more reserved, but she's opening up little by little. Last Saturday, Mark introduced us to his new boyfriend, Chris. Chris definitely surprised me. Mark never mentioned being bisexual when he was married to Diane. He told me he had always known, but he had hidden that part of himself because Diane would make homophobic comments anytime the subject came up. Chris is kind and gets along great with the kids. The kids seem to like him right away. Ben has a new job now at a rival construction company. According to my daughter, he's doing pretty well financially. She mentioned that he bought the apartment he's renting now, a fancy place downtown. Apparently, he had a separate savings account that I never knew about. My lawyer says this could be important for the divorce settlement. Ben and Diane aren't seeing each other anymore. My daughter told me they had a huge fight after Ben's parents basically refused to acknowledge Diane at a family get-together. Ben finally realized what he'd lost for someone who only cared about herself. Diane's life has pretty much fallen apart. Audrey told me she was evicted from her apartment and is living in her car, working at a convenience store. The police case against Diane for abusing Mark is moving slowly. The prosecutor says it's tough because a lot of the abuse happened years ago, but recent text message threats are helping the case. Mark is prepared to testify if the case goes to trial. I've started talking to a financial advisor to help secure our future. The divorce settlement should be enough for me to keep the house and keep things stable for the kids, but now I need to start thinking long term. I'm thinking about going back to school to get a certification that will help me move up at work. Mark and Chris have invited us to go camping next month. My son is really excited. My daughter isn't totally sold on being in nature for so many days, but she's willing to give it a try. It will be our first real family trip without Ben. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and almost a year since I found Ben and Diane together. So much has changed, sometimes I barely recognize my life. The divorce was finalized last month. Ben didn't challenge any of my requests. I kept the house, got primary custody of the kids, and received fair child support. That secret savings account he had turned out to be pretty considerable. He had been saving money for years. The judge ordered that he share those funds with me, since that money was earned while we were married. He actually had to sell the apartment he bought to give me my share of the money he'd hidden. And I know what you might be thinking, that the house did end up solely in my name. But that was different. Besides using my inheritance money for the down payment, I also contributed to the monthly payments. He contributed too, but I had contributed more over time, so I got it as compensation. The separate account he set up and used to buy his apartment was money he had hidden from me, and that didn't look good to the judge. The infidelity also didn't help his case in the divorce. I'm not going to lie. My son still refuses to have any kind of relationship with Ben. He's channeled his anger into sports, joining the school basketball team and doing really well. His coach says he has real talent. I go to every game, cheering louder than anyone else. It almost feels like I'm living through him a bit, because he gets to pursue his dream. But honestly, I'm just happy that he loves playing sports, no matter what kind. My daughter sees Ben every other weekend. She has stopped having the dissociative episodes, though she still has trouble trusting people. Her therapist says she's making good progress. She and I have grown closer than ever. We have a weekly movie night just for the two of us. Usually, a chick flick. One night, Diane showed up at my door looking thin and defeated. She wanted to stay in our guest room while she found a new job and saved up for an apartment. She also brought a letter that I read later, apologizing for everything. The basketball incident when we were teenagers, stealing my boyfriend, the years of trying to undermine me, and finally the affair with Ben. She wrote that she had always been jealous of me, even though our parents always favored her. She said I had a natural confidence that she could never match, and that made her hate me. When she showed up at my door and handed me the letter, I honestly just did what anyone naturally would. I laughed at her nerve and slammed the door in her face. Seriously, this person ruined my life, and now she wanted a place to stay because she had nowhere else to go? Well, it seems pretty fair to me that she has nowhere to go, and I'm planning on helping keep it that way. From what I understand, she now lives in a pretty rough apartment complex. It's an improvement from living in her car, but not by much. Come on. It's one of those places where you go to sleep hearing your neighbors screaming, and the next day you wake up to the sound of police sirens arriving to look for a body. It's the full package: white noise for sleeping and a free alarm. Mark and Chris have become a regular part of our lives. We did go camping, and it turned out to be exactly what we all needed. Being out in nature, away from all the old memories, allowed us all to relax and laugh together. My daughter and Chris bonded over bird watching. Now she sends him photos of birds she sees around town. My friendship with Tara from the gym has also grown. We signed up for a half marathon together, which is also something totally new for me. I never thought I'd ever be a runner, but the physical challenge helps clear my head. Just last week, Tara introduced me to her brother, Michael. He's also divorced and has a teenage son. We hit it off right away, talking for hours over coffee. He invited me to dinner next weekend. I said yes. Then I panicked. Was I ready to date again? My therapist says there's no timeline for moving forward, but it still feels strange. I told the kids about going to dinner with Michael because I wanted to be transparent. My son just shrugged and said, "Whatever makes you happy, Mom." My daughter had a lot more questions. How old is he? What does he do for work? Are we going to meet him? Stuff like that. I answered, honestly, assuring them this was just dinner, not a new relationship. Ben somehow found out, probably through our daughter. He showed up unannounced, wanting to talk. For the first time, he didn't try to make excuses or beg for me to take him back. He just said he understood that he had broken something that couldn't be fixed. He said he just wanted me to know he was sorry, truly sorry, and that losing me and the kids is the biggest regret of his life. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I told him I appreciated the apology, but I was still going out to dinner with someone next weekend. He didn't seem happy about it, but he didn't seem like he wanted to pick a fight either. As he was leaving, Ben asked if I thought our son would ever speak to him again. I told him I didn't know, that it was something only our son could decide. I just promised I wouldn't get in the middle of it. Not by telling him not to see Ben, and not by pushing him to. It's my son's decision, and he'll know what he wants to do. The case against Deanne was settled out of court. She agreed to probation, anger management classes, and a restraining order preventing her from contacting Mark. Mark says he's satisfied with the result. My parents tried to reach out last month. My mother called saying they had time to think and realized they had been unfair to me. I met them for lunch, but I wasn't expecting much. My father spent most of the time making excuses for Deanne and then suggesting I should consider forgiving Ben for the kids' sake. I got up and left before dessert even arrived, even though we had already ordered it. I haven't spoken to them since. Some relationships just aren't worth saving. Tomorrow I start classes for that certification I mentioned. Next month, the kids and I are going on a beach vacation. Our first real family trip since everything happened. Update 4. It's been almost 2 years since I last wrote here. I was thinking about this the other night, and when I logged in, I saw some messages asking for an update. So, here are some updates on my life. My kids are doing really well. My son still doesn't speak to his dad, and at this point, I honestly don't know if he ever will. He's so busy with his life at school, with his friends and basketball, that he says he just doesn't have time for his unfaithful dad. He recently started dating a girl, and that's also keeping him pretty busy. You know how teenagers are? We've all been there before. He's also busy because there's a real chance he could get a scholarship to play basketball in college, which would help a lot with paying for his education. My daughter has also stopped talking to her dad. That happened after he started pressuring her to try and convince her brother to talk to him. She eventually got tired of it and told him that she had given him a chance by keeping him in her life, but he had still messed it up. She still has some time to think about college, but we're already starting to look into applying for scholarships and grants, plus whatever we can save for her. My relationship with Michael has blossomed beautifully, and the kids have definitely gotten to know him. Even Mark and his boyfriend, Chris, are still very much part of the family. They often come over for dinner, or we'll have a dinner date night at their place. My relationship with my parents is still non-existent. We haven't spoken since that last lunch. It's not like I've missed them either. There hasn't been a single day when I've thought, I miss them. The most I've done is think about them and think, doesn't feel so bad. My sister is still living. Well, I assume she's still living wherever she was before, or at least that's what I know. As you can probably tell, there's still absolutely no relationship with her, and I don't plan for there ever to be one. Ben was actually fired a few months ago from his old job, around the same time he stopped talking to our daughter. After that, I stopped getting any information about him because the only person who would tell me anything was my daughter. All I know is he moved away from here, probably because between his family and our kids, there weren't exactly a lot of people supporting him. The reasons he was fired had something to do with how he managed company resources. Apparently, he was padding orders and selling the extra materials, but it could just be typical gossip blown out of proportion. I have no interest in trying to verify it, and honestly, no way to either. But really, I don't care enough to find out for sure. He's just the guy who slept with his wife's sister. No major changes, just life moving forward, pretty normally.